1:30 p.m. and I call this meeting of the Needham Design Review Board to order. I'm Mark Lusing, Board Chair. I would like to confirm that all members and applicants are present and can hear me. So members, when I call your name, please respond. Nelson Hammer.
Here.
Len Karen.
Here.
Deborah Robinson.
Here.
Steve Tanner.
Here.
Oh, there's, okay. Also attending our town staff, Rana Monerdorfer and Elisa Lichman. Applicants, please respond with your name. We have a special permit application for Boston Properties, 140 Kendrick Street.
Here.
And we have a zoning board of appeals review for a retaining wall at 83 Rolling Lane. I assume that's
Here.
Okay. Good evening. Welcome to this open meeting of the Needham Design Review Board, which is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. The order allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with deliberations for the meeting. For this meeting, the Design Review Board is convening by Zoom app as posted on the town's website on the Design Review Board page, identifying how the public may join. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. There is a special permit application tonight, so we will be allowing public comments on that item. Otherwise, the DRB agenda items will not typically require allowing public comment. All the supporting materials have been provided to the members of this board, are available on the town's website. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video. Accordingly, please be aware that other people may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer unless the chair approves. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. I would like to review the meeting procedures for tonight's meeting. I will introduce each applicant on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will take comments or questions from the DRB members. And in the case of the special permit, question any from public questions. After discussion, each vote will be by roll call vote. The building department is requiring electronic submission of building permit applications. A copy of your application, stamped and noted for the type of approval that it receives, will be emailed to you by the DRB support staff. That can then be attached to your building permit application. So we will now start with the first item on the agenda. So I want to state that this is a public hearing for Boston Properties located at 140 Kendrick Street for a special permit pursuant to the sign bylaws 5.5.3.1a and 5.5.4, 5.5.1b. More than one freestanding sign and over the maximum size, and 3 directional signs over the maximum size, and any other applicable sections of the bylaw. So I will, Alyssa, you're here.
Yep.
Go ahead and take us through your presentation.
Great, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Elise Lundy. I am a project manager over at Boston Properties. First off, I'd like to thank the committee for allowing me to present this tonight. So we went in front of the design review board a couple of months ago for the monument sign. So this is along the same lines. So our property at 140 Kendrick Street in Needham used to be a single tenant owned asset. It's currently comprised of 3 buildings, and we are in the process of now making that a multi-tenanted asset. So along with that, we have secured an anchor tenant over there, IDG, and we also we recently finished the upgrade of our amenity center over at 140 Kendrick, and along with the amenity center, we have decided to update the campus as well as wayfinding signage, which is why I'm before you today. So we have 2 signs that we're presenting on in a multitude of different locations. So one would be directional wayfinding signage and the other is 4 tenant ID signs for the entrance of each building. Mark, I think you're on mute.
Why don't I put one up for you? We'll talk about the first one. I'm a little confused when I looked at the application and I see a sign and then I see a map with 2 signs and then I see a different sign with a different map with a number. How many total signs are you? I mean, as we go through each one, I want to know how many of each we're looking at, trying to get approved. Okay, that'll be one of the first questions. So
Yep.
let me bring up A here. That's not it. Might have a little trouble here. So this is your first proposed sign, correct?
Yep.
And is that the only location? How many of these are there going to be?
So to answer your first question, out of the 4 signs that we've proposed on, there's 10 total signs. So for this one in particular, which is the taller of the 2 directional wayfinding signages, there are 2 locations for that. So if you go, you get a couple of, if you go to page 7 of the document that you're presenting, that shows the relative locations where we're proposing that sign in particular.
Okay. Okay, so why don't we, I think what I'm going to do is run through the whole package and
Okay.
then we'll come back and do one at a time and get questions because I just had a hard time getting my head around what was where. So we'll move to the next one. Give me a sec. Just give a quick description of what you're trying to do with this and how many are these?
Sure. So these are, there are 4 locations proposed on the campus, which should be the next couple of slides down. So this is just the secondary directional. We have 2, the sign that you had just put up on the screen, that's a larger directional. This is just kind of a smaller one that would most likely be more building based. So for example, like building where you can see their position on the campus, you'd probably have like a building B loading dock directional, building C garage entrance. So instead of having a multitude of larger signs, we split them into a smaller and a larger directional sign.
And the wording on them is going to vary.
Correct. Yep. Depending on where they're placed within the campus.
Okay, and can everyone see on this plan that where those locations are? You can see the locations by the garage, one out on some parking along Kendrick, and then one at that entrance across from the sign we just looked at, and then this one down by the loading dock. Next. And this is a build sort of, I assume the names are not in, are just a speculation at this time, but these are signs that you want to mount on those stone walls to identify buildings.
Correct.
Tenants in the buildings.
So we would have 2 of this type of sign. So this would be mounted on the existing stone wall that we have there. It's in 2 locations. Our building C that's on that property, where you see the 2 locations there, there's a existing stone wall that runs along there. So the tenants that you see on that sign are purely for examples.
Okay. Again, I'll show you the sign for the board and those locations. And We have another sign. Oop, building A. Sorry.
Yep, so similar to the previous sign, it has the same design concept. It just has a different foundation. So in front of our buildings A and B on the campus, as shown on the map, there is no stone wall in those two locations. So that would be mounted on a concrete foundation, but it's the same relative design concept.
Okay, and one of them would be A and one would be B.
One would be A and yes, and B.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna go back to the first. Okay, we've seen the sort of overall thing. I kind of want to get the board to start discussing. Feel free to discuss either each particular one, and I'd like to discuss the particular one in front of us first, and then if you have any comments related to the overall quantity that relate to your how you would your judgment on this sign. So I wonder if we could start off. Deborah, could you start off, please?
Is Deborah muted?
Unmute. Okay, I had a dog barking. Could you just refresh my memory? When you were here a month ago, was it different signs you presented, or was it these and these have been revised?
So we presented the main monument sign that would sit outside the 140 Kendrick campus, which would be directly across to, I think it's the Coca-Cola distributing facility, would be the one that you would see.
Okay, so that's in addition to these 10.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
That was this sign, Deborah, here.
Okay, so you're having that sign, and then you're seeing this first C1 number 1 kind of right across the driveway from it. That's the other one is just the names, and then this is the first directional one that you'll see. Okay, sorry, go back to it. So, and is this over the allowed size? Is what we're saying? The directional size
Well,
or over the maximum size allowed?
To be a directional sign, yes, it's too large. And so now it's a sign, and they already have their allowed by right sign. So every other sign that they want to do that is larger than 2 square feet is going to typically require a special permit.
So why is it so tall?
Just to fit more items in it, because it is a larger campus. We have 3 buildings, which will most likely all be multi-tenanted. Just to give people a better idea of where they're going. It is a little confusing right now as it is, because the directional signage there isn't that great. It also allows us to put items on there like the Cutler Park to let the public know where to park for that amenity.
And the size of the letters here is what it's a little small on the screen. 3 1/4 inches, is that what it's saying? The visitor parking,
Yeah.
the size of the font?
Yes. Yes, that's what it is, Deborah.
Okay. I mean, it's not a bad looking sign. I don't object to the appearance. So it's a faux wood grain aluminum on the aluminum base. Is that what we're seeing at the bottom?
Yeah. Yep.
That's like so is
It's
that like a vinyl?
So the bottom is a removable wood panel, and then the sides will be aluminum.
So it's actually, it's real wood?
Yes.
Okay.
And then these ones are not illuminated. It's actually a surface mounted reflective vinyl for the lettering and the arrows.
I mean, other than that, I think the size is big, so you don't have any images of this sort of in place like a Photoshop. Oh, you do? Okay. It's hard to tell. I mean, I think it's a nice sign. I think it's just, it seems big. It seems bigger than it needs to be. I guess is my comment.
Okay. Steve?
Steve, you're muted.
Steve, can you unmute yourself, please?
All right. I don't see a section on the sign. So I'm trying to determine whether the Cutler Park panel is sitting proud of that oak bottom. And the same with the 140, is that sitting in front of the oak panel, or is it all on the same plane? There's no section.
So I believe there's the end view, detail number 3 would be the section. As far as the letters, the 140, that would just be surface mounted. So that's on the same plane.
I think the signs are appropriate. I just wish we had a section to look at. Well, I can see, it's like side A, I guess, is in front of the oak. Other than that, I think the signs are fine for the project.
Len, any questions, comments?
No, I agree with Steve. I think it's appropriate and it looks fine for the project.
Nelson?
I think the signs are a little bit too big too. And I think the lettering could probably stand to be a little bit smaller in order to make these signs a little bit smaller and keep the amount of field versus lettering consistent with what you see there. I also have a question about how it's mounted. I see a dotted line going into the ground. Is it metal that is poured into a concrete foundation? And how deep is the concrete foundation?
So we won't have, so to answer your question, it would be a concrete foundation, probably anchored with anchor bolts into the foundation. We generally don't have the details on the foundation size until this goes into fabrication. And we get the shop drawings. But it
Okay,
I wouldn't
interesting to
imagine
know.
it to be any, it shouldn't be a large, I would say 2 feet deep at most, probably 1'6".
By how wide, by how thick? Because it doesn't, the dotted line doesn't look deep enough to support a sign that size. Have you any idea how much the size the sign would weigh?
I don't have that information right now.
Okay. The river cobbles shown at the bottom, are they for decoration and not for part of the foundation?
Yeah, that would just be for aesthetic purposes.
Okay. Those are my comments, Mark.
Okay, so let's look at this is the other directional. There are 4 of these. They would have a variety of indications on them. From what police has told us, they would vary entrance to see. I'm not sure what they're varied. The size is a little smaller. These are 3 feet high, 3 feet wide, roughly. So a little bit smaller sign. I'm not sure that. Don't really designate on this particular one how big the lettering is. Oh, there's 3-inch lettering, which from 3 1/4 on the larger side. And then any issues with these these sort of upscale directional signage? I guess a little concerned about this location here being right across from the first directional sign, and why And that actually shows up in the photo on the first one. Not sure why. You're just telling them here where to go. Oh, you're trying to indicate the service entrance? Okay.
Yeah, it's a pretty big campus and we also have that parking garage. So we have a lot of different items in place. So you have the 3 buildings that will most likely all be multi-tenanted with the exception of B. You have the new amenity center, which is where that pavilion is in the drawing. And then you also have the parking garage and then all of the loading docks for each respective building.
Okay.
So that's why you see the multitude of signs. So the large, what we were thinking for the larger directional signs would be more of like a broader theme. So like parking garage, amenity center, Cutler Park, and then the smaller directional ones would be more specific. So as you get closer to each building, you know, where's the loading dock for building B? Where's the loading dock for building C? I know that the tenant we have in there right now, IDG, their vendors have had a tough time trying to locate where they're supposed to go and maneuver around that campus without any wayfinding signage. So
Okay.
we're trying to bring simplicity to an otherwise large and very vibrant office park.
So if we go back to this larger monument, that's the same thing. The writing would not necessarily be the same at each location. You've got the 2 locations here.
Correct, so that'll vary. So like the one on the plan west will most likely say, you know, the exchange, which is our tagline for the new amenity center, would probably have an arrow to that, and then it would probably have an arrow for the parking garage entrance. So each one of those signs would have a different directional.
Okay.
But the image we're seeing, could you go back to the slide you just had on the view?
It's view.
That one. But like this wording where you have both of them are pointing to the left to Cutler Park, they'll both still do that.
It's not really the way to Cutler Park. I mean, it's where Cutler Park is, but if you drive in there and try and follow those arrows to park, you're not going to get anywhere. Are you concerned? Are you concerned about directing cars? That
I
way?
believe there's an entrance. If you go to the site plan, you should be able, there's an entrance to that parking lot to Cutler Park that you can, yeah, so if you go down,
Oh, down here. Okay. Right
so
here.
you can access it through there.
Okay, good. Thank you. I guess my only concerns, I think the small signs are probably going to be useful in a complex like this. And so I don't have a problem. And they're well designed and they look nice. I would agree with Nelson and Steve. This is probably the only one that tells me it's just a little bit big, 6'8" for, you know, right after you enter the site, having seen the main entrance with everybody's name on it, because we worked through with you before on how the different tenants would be listed on there and the style and coloring and things. So I would see if the board would think this could be just a little bit smaller, maybe get it down to 5 feet high instead of 6'8", if that would be sufficient. I think it would just change this. I don't think it really changes the scale of anything. You'd have a little less negative space on the bottom probably, or the top. But also both of these don't have the same sort of wording and arrow orientation. So I think that the one on the other end was probably work fine. I'd be curious if any other board members have thoughts on the size.
I already said I thought it was too tall. And it just seems like if it's the Cutler, just back to the Cutler business, that this one and the other one you're seeing at the same time. It doesn't seem like you need the Cutler arrow to the left on both of them. You could almost just make this another small sign only pointing straight ahead to the visitor parking and exchange, and just leave the Cutler Park left arrow on that that other sign.
Anyone
I'm
else?
okay with lowering it from 6'8" to 5 feet.
And Deborah's comment about not pointing out the same thing twice in the same perspective. I guess there are sort of two entrances there, so I think that, let's look at it here. There are two entrances to that. Well, this is really an exit from the parking lot, so yeah. I don't have a lot of trouble with it. I think I'd agree with Deborah, it probably isn't necessary, but if they want to do it, I don't mind as long as we shrink the size of the overall sign. People agree with that?
Yeah, I'd rather have too many signs than not enough if somebody's trying to find their way.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay. All right, so
If you're going to shrink the signs, you should probably shrink the base a little bit too.
okay. Okay, let's do the size. So we have a 5'10" sign. If we made it, it's 5'10" on the back, 5'8" on the front, but so we get the base is approximately a foot high with some sort of ground around it. So if we made the sign 5 feet, we make the base 10 inches, 9 inches. Steve?
Yeah.
Does that work, Steve?
Yeah, 9 sounds good.
Okay. All right, so let's move to, I think the small signs then we're willing to accept the quantity and locations and the basic design of those. Would we want to match the base on this then, Steve, so that they have a similar look, even though the upper is different?
Yeah, the small signs are noted here to have a 12-inch base too. Maybe
Okay.
they should be reduced to 9.
Okay. Okay, we'll look at that. All right, let's look then at the last, their last proposal, which are really four signs of this, the two of this style on a stone wall, and then it'll be 2 freestanding. Overall square footage is, so they're not, the panel itself is about 25, it is 24 square feet, and then the letter projects up. So why don't we go through again? Deborah, you want to start on this one?
I don't have a problem with this. I think when we looked at the sign a while back and it had sort of the projecting letters, there was some talk about the letters being too much, but I kind of like it, sort of sticking up.
Okay.
Is the idea that the colors just vary by what the tenant wants, or are these the colors?
So it would vary by the tenant.
tenant,
The idea
okay.
would be to match whatever the anchor tenant or larger tenant's color scheme is. But then you'd also see the middle panel has other tenants in there.
Yeah.
And then so right now our building fee is completely leased out to one tenant. So these are all modular as well. So we would just most likely leave that panel blank, and it would just be the main tenant on the left.
This is, I'm looking at the notes. This is internally illuminated signage, so the lettering would be lit. The boxes are the colors shown. And that large C is described as a 6-inch thick painted aluminum channel, acrylic faced with surface mounted vinyl internally illuminated. That's a little confusing as to how, could you describe how that C is made and installed?
Sure. So that's just a channel letter. It's custom and open. It has aluminum sides and returns, and it's acrylic face lit.
front and back or just the front?
I'm not sure if the back is lit as well. Probably not. It probably has a solid backing.
Okay. Steve, do you have any questions, comments?
I'm concerned how they attach the plastic face to the channel. Usually when you state just a channel, we are talking about a metal back, metal sides, plastic face. That would be the definition of a channel letter. But how they attach that plastic face can be 2 or 3 different ways. And some ways don't stand the test of time as others might. If they just use a plastic trim to hold the plastic face on, I would recommend not doing that. That's the easiest way to do it. I'd recommend they use either a metal trim, made out of aluminum, or they have the letters mounted with concealed pins through the edges that go into the letter faces, and not plastic trim around the outside.
Okay.
So Steve, are you talking in regards to how that letter C is attached to the sign or the wall?
No, that's how the C would be made.
Okay.
He's talking about they talk about a acrylic faced lettering, that you have the acrylic face on the front of that. How is that? We have no information about how that C is actually constructed. I mean, we know what a channel letter is, so we're going on that knowledge, but typically there's an edge condition that holds the plastic face in place, or there's another way, Steve also mentioned this concealed pin approach. It doesn't really indicate what you're doing here. And so the concern is that the simplest and easiest way is also use a plastic retainer sort of trim that, but that's not as good as, and doesn't hold up over time. So I guess our question, we may just make that a condition, since I don't think you know how it's being held together.
I don't have the specifics, but I'd assume it's more comprehensive than the plastic trim.
Yeah, well, okay. We'll when we make our motions, we'll see. Len, do you have any questions or comments?
Len, you muted?
Yes, I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
We're looking at this sign C. Do you have any questions or comments on the design of this particular?
No,
sign?
I'm sorry. I'm okay. No questions.
There's 2 locations on each end of that stone wall.
Yep. I'm okay with this.
Okay. Nelson?
I presume that's an existing stone wall. I don't know how it's constructed. If it's dry laid, I would have a concern about how the sign is connected to it. If it's mortared, I think it would be a little bit easy, but there's no indication of how the sign is connected to the wall. And if the sign has any reasonable weight to it, it's going to put a bit of pressure on whatever's holding it to the stone wall.
Yeah, so that's an existing concrete wall with a stone face. So the thought is we would just anchor it into the wall and bolt it through that concrete wall.
The concrete, okay.
So the drawing indicates it's a stacked stone wall, but really it's a veneered concrete wall. Okay.
So the stacked stone wall is incorrect.
Right.
Is that right, Mark?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's helpful for us if you guys can, go through and review some of these conditions so that we can understand it, and then because we probably wouldn't have had a question had we known a little more about what's actually in place there.
Yes, we can make those changes. When we submitted this, it was pretty early on in the design process, and since then they've been able to visit the site.
Okay, and let's look at this last sign. Again, this is similar. I want to point out one thing before we move forward on this. That C letter is 3 foot 5 inches high.
Where's Bonnie?
We have company. So then we have the ground mounted sign where there's no stone wall. And there are two of these. One would be building A, one would be building B. But the overall design and construction is similar. And note the difference here that this letter is 2 foot 10 inches high. And if you look at the site, it is across from that stone wall there and there. Right, so Deborah, you want to start us off again? on
Yeah,
this?
I mean, that's actually a good point. It seems to me like those letters should all be the same size, the A, B, C, D. I mean, is there a reason they're not?
Not to my knowledge, no.
I mean, where they are really are right across from each other. I think that'll be noticeable and look kind of awkward. I mean, other than that, I don't have any problem with the sign. I just have to look at them together. I don't know if the C could be made. I mean, this one obviously isn't going to be made bigger, but this going back to the C, you know, maybe that the gray band or that, you know, the band on the right becomes shorter. And so the C can be the same size as the A and still split the C in the center and have it kind of fit in the band in the same way. You know, I'm saying the black rectangle get shorter.
That makes sense. Steve?
I think the sign's okay. I mean, I think it's fine.
Okay. Nelson, Len? Guess we keep the same order here.
Nope, I'm okay. Looks good.
Nelson?
I agree with Deborah. I think all the letters should be the same size.
Okay, and this box is similar in scale to those smaller directionals that we looked at earlier. So I would say I would agree with Deborah also that we go back to this sign that we would want to make the C 2 foot 10 as well. And then if you would need to shrink I don't think it impacts the black box portion. But if you choose to shrink that lengthwise for aesthetically, we wouldn't have any problem with that. Does that make sense to the members?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, anything else on these then? I want to kind of see if we can move ahead on these. I think overall we are comfortable with these and I'm going to start with a motion, and if anyone wants to add to it, you can let me know. But that the large
I have one thing as a comment on, Mark. If you want to make the C smaller, the panel on the C is on those side panels are 2 foot 1, and the panel on the A is 2 foot 4. So if you're going to have the letter height of the major letter being 2 foot 10, maybe we ought to reduce the panel size on the C from 2 foot 1. The other one, this A should be reduced to 2 foot 1 to match the other one, to match the C panel. The panels on the sign with the C are 2 foot 1 high. The panels on the sign with the A are 2 foot 4 high. We should have all the panels be the same. Especially if you're going to make the letter A be the same.
Okay. At least can that work? I don't see any problem. I mean, again, you don't have a tenant name to put in there, but it appears like there's plenty of space to make that work, and it worked in the first one.
Yeah, usually the width determines the size of the tenant name.
I think it should be able to work. I think that the difference in the lengths and the heights have to do possibly with that stone wall. And then also if you look at by the sea, there's the east. So one of the buildings, the building C is quite large. So we actually have a west and the east entrance. And we may have increased that C just to accommodate the west and the east for each one of those signs, whereas building A and B don't have, they each have only one entrance, so there's no need to distinguish between two entrances.
Yeah, I think given that these are pedestrian, really, these are pedestrian signs, you're inside the complex, you're not driving by at 15, 20 miles an hour. These are really to just help again, as you said, wayfinding in the beginning, but it's at a pace that I don't see needs a 3.5 foot high letter. So I think I'd agree with the members that a little more consistency here would work better for you. I think that it would be a positive approach. Steve, any consideration to making this box 2'4" instead of making it smaller?
I just think they should be the same.
Okay. So if we ask you to make them the same, at least, which size is going to work best?
I mean, it's a difference of 3 inches. So I think it's just it's the stone wall that kind of comes into play.
All right, so we'll make it, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just looking at it from like a structural perspective. If you increase the building C ones, then you're increasing the weight and the height on that stone wall.
Okay, so we'll make a condition on the second one that it be 2'1". All right, these are, I'm trying to see. They're sort of labeled by locations, but the sign type doesn't really change. So I'm going to go back to the start, and we'll. So I would accept a motion that we approve a large site sign with the conditions that the sign portion with the graphics be 5 feet high and that the base be reduced to 9 inches.
I so move.
Second,
Okay, we come to the vote. Nelson,
Approve.
Len,
approve.
Deborah,
Approve.
Steve,
Approve.
and the chair approves. The next sign is the small building signs. There are 4 of them, the small directional signs. 4.5 square feet with a base. I would accept a motion to approve these with the modification that the base be reduced to 9 inches.
I so move.
Second,
And we come to the vote. Nelson,
Approve.
Len,
approve.
Deborah,
Approve.
Steve,
Approve.
the chair approves. And the next item is the building C signage. And I would accept a motion that we approve this with the condition that the C letter be reduced to 2'10" in height.
I so move.
And also, Steve, you want to make some condition about how the face is mounted?
Well, they're gonna have, I think we need to see a shop drawing on that. They're not even ready to build these signs. They're just getting approval.
Okay, well, why don't we prove that, but ask, at least you could send us some information. You don't have to come to a meeting, but we would like some additional information to review. And if there's a problem, if we have any problem with it, then we will contact you and ask you to come back in to review the issue. Does that work for you?
Yep.
Okay. So I would say that we would approve the sign with the condition that the large letter C be reduced to 2'10".
I so move.
Second.
So we come to the vote. Nelson,
Approve.
Len,
Approve.
Deborah,
Approve.
Steve,
approve.
and the chair approves. Okay, and then our last sign is this one, and I would accept a motion that we approve this sign with the condition that the overall aluminum cabinet be reduced to 2 foot 1 inch high.
I so move.
Second.
Okay, we've come to the vote. Nelson, vote, please. You can raise your hand. Len,
Approve.
Deborah,
Approve.
Steve,
Approve.
the chair approves. All right, and I think that completes that package. So at least we will get these, I will mark these up with those conditions and we'll get drawing documents back to you in the near future, later this week typically.
Great, thank you, guys.
All right, thanks. And then next, second item on the agenda, Henderson Consulting Services and Flavia Montanari applying for a retaining wall review. They are before the Zoning Board of Appeals. Part of the review at the Zoning Board of Appeals is that we review the design of the retaining walls. So this is at 83 Rolling Lane. So why don't I let you take over. Scott, is Scott here?
I'm here. Good evening. For the record, I'm Scott Henderson of Henderson Consulting. I'm the project civil engineer. Also here tonight is Flavia Montanari, the homeowner and applicant. And also logged in, you'll see a John Justo on the attendees. He's the contractor and sort of designer that designed the overall project. So I guess I'll start by kind of walking through what the overall project is and why we're here. If I can share my screen.
Sure.
Okay, can everyone see the PDF there, the existing
Yep.
conditions plan? Okay. So the site is at 83 Rolling Lane. It's currently improved with a single family home, driveway, utilities, so the typical sort of site. The main component and the reason why we're here is that the rear yard from the back of the house to sort of a lower area midway to the back of the property, there's a drop of about 21 or 22 feet at a slope of about 1.5 to 1 on average. So it's fairly steep. It's a pre-existing condition. I have some photos here. This is standing at the bottom of that hill in the backyard looking up at the house. The picture doesn't really do this justice, but this ground surface here is about 21 feet above where I'm standing taking that photo. So the intent of the project is to construct a couple terraces behind the house. You see the existing house here. We have sort of a walkway terrace just behind the back of the house that ties into some existing decks. You have a small step of about 4-ish feet down to a main patio terrace that has an in-ground pool proposed. At that point, we're still about 17 feet above the existing grade in the back of the site. So we're creating this terrace. There'll be a first retaining wall stepping down. That wall steps down about 5.5 or 6 feet. The next wall that's about 10 feet further back steps down another 7-ish feet. And we are doing some grading in the backyard and filling upwards of 4 feet in that existing backyard to make as much grade up as we can without retaining walls. The main constraint in all this, and the reason why we're sort of pushing all this a certain distance from the house, we have a bordering vegetated wetland, the back of the site, and an intermittent stream. And you'll see there's a sort of double dash line here that I'm tracing with my cursor. That's a 50-foot buffer zone. We can't construct any structures within that. So that's sort of the hard limit of how far back we can push with this project. We are currently have an open hearing with the Conservation Commission They've seen this plan that you're looking at. There was no feedback that indicates that there would be any major changes as a result of their review. So we felt it was a good point at which to come before the DRB, and then following this, we'll submit an application to the ZBA. The plans that were submitted to you specifically addressed sort of the retaining walls. So this is a zoomed in site plan in plan view. The town's regulations state that within the side yard setback, any wall exceeding a height of 4 feet requires a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals. What's shown on this plan in the hatched red hatching are the walls within the side yard setback that do exceed that 4 feet. The other walls, though integral to the whole project, are allowed by right. If you're within the building envelope and you're not within the setbacks, you can go up to 12 feet. And we don't have a condition exceeding that. And all of our terraced walls are further apart than they are high individually. So again, those are viewed as separate walls. So within the purview of the Zoning Board of Appeals permit are only these walls that are in red. This plan shows the same, but includes a couple basic sections showing what we're looking at. Section C is sort of the most, I think, important to look at here. That's as if you're standing along this right-hand property line and you're looking at the side of the wall. You'll see for a stretch of about 28 horizontal feet, you have the 2 wall terraces that exceed that 4 feet in height. It starts at 4 on the upper terrace, extends to a maximum height of just over 9 feet. That wall steps down 5 feet, and then that exposed lower wall goes from about 4.3 to 7.6 feet. We looked at several ways to sort of work this out and felt that, this scenario creates, the tallest wall portions in an area that's not visible to anybody but the homeowner. And even then, they'd have to go down to the very back of the site to see that. You won't see any of this work from the street. And to the right, the closest to butter, cycle through a couple photos here. Closest to butter, you'll see, in this photo, there's a white vinyl stockade fence here. Our highest terrace starts beyond that, and the only way to visibly see the wall would be standing in this fairly dense wooded area looking back at the wall. So although those walls are fairly tall and exposed, they're not visible to anybody in any condition, even the winter. We went there in the winter and it's still very well vegetated, even with that seasonal foliage off the trees. In terms of houses behind us, you can't even see them. The nearest house that would be able to see the backyard of our property from theirs is about 180 feet away from that nearest wall. And again, there's ample vegetation between us and that wall now. And there will be more as part of the conservation permitting. We are planting a few new canopy trees and some evergreens along the back. So we'll be kind of screening the project as a whole. Lastly, in terms of wall material, I don't have a rendering specific to this wall, but the product used is going to be an anchored diamond pearl wall. Ideally, it's cost effective. The blocks are about they're 8 inches tall and a foot wide, and produce a sort of moderate scale wall, not a huge block, but nothing so small that it's cumbersome and difficult to construct, and therefore sort of cost prohibitive. There are several different types of finishes of that wall. The intent is to use something dark, something closer to a field stone. If you look here, sorry for scrolling so fast. There's several different block types. I think the ideal would probably be this, the Pro Stone cut, sort of a darker finish in there, so it sort of disappears into the landscape. Again, not visible from the road or any abutting properties. The applicant has spoke to the neighbor closest to where these walls are located, just to the right here. They will be drafting a letter in support of the project to submit to the ZBA. So we've, approached I think the one entity or one abutter that we think might potentially have a view of this, and they have no concern. So yeah, I can field any questions. I'm sure there'll be a few.
All right, thank you. That was very good. Nelson, do you want to start off? You're not coming through, Nelson. We can see you. We can't hear you. Chad, can you check if he's, I mean, not Chad. Clay, can you check if he's muted in some other direction? Do you not have an unmute button on the Zoom image, Nelson?
Looked like he was unmuted, but he was speaking and it wasn't picking up.
He looks unmuted. He looks muted to me.
Right.
Now he is.
His microphone wasn't muted earlier. I think he just hit the mute button, but maybe
Send him a quick text.
hit unmute, Nelson. All right. Oh. No, you muted yourself again. Okay, try talking now. Nope.
Oh,
I'm actually not sure what would be causing that problem.
his
be a local
computer might
PC
be
issue.
off.
Okay.
Okay, well, we'll,
What is this?
hold on.
Says
Move on.
it is not working.
Says what is not working? His microphone?
I'm assuming his computer says it's not working.
Okay.
Well,
Uh,
we'll
they-
just go to
they
someone
can-
else until.
Well, he can
else
write his, he can
figures it
obviously write his comments.
Right, he can, or he can log back in. He's the
out.
best way.
Just go
So
to like
Len-
pharaonic times, just have him
Len.
etch it on a slab.
Yeah, I got a
Alright.
quick, Scott, I got a quick question. Sorry if I missed it. The block I'm quite familiar with. It's a fantastic product. What are you guys doing for capping? Are you capping it with the same aesthetic, or are you gonna do granite, something nice? What do you guys have in mind for that?
I can't answer that specifically. I know there will be some form of a cap. I imagine there'll be something a little bit nicer than like the typical cast
Yeah.
cap. I'm not 100% positive. I
Okay.
think the lower walls, because they're not visible really from the pool patio, might differ from the shorter walls that are up tighter to the house to work in an aesthetic that sort of matches whatever patio block is chosen. But yeah, I can't say with certainty exactly what that will be. But again, the
Okay.
project is scale and scope. I think they'll pick something nice.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. To me, it looks fantastic. I was just curious about the capping, but otherwise, I'm good with this. It looks great.
Okay. Deborah?
No, no comments, no objection.
Okay, Steve?
I think the project was well presented and it solves the problem that the homeowner needs.
Okay, yeah, I would agree. I thought, you know, we are very careful about the stepping on these. Typically, we'd like them to be smaller, rather as small as we can make them. I did look at a larger mapping of that area. Their property goes all the way back to a small section of a property that's behind them, but really it's open all the way to the street below. So it's really pretty invisible. And so the real question is the impact on that adjacent neighbor to the right, I guess, if you're facing the house. And again, because looking at that side section, that was very helpful. While the wall reaches 9 feet, it's not a continuous 9 feet, it's a short distance and then it steps. And, you know, I might have suggested a third tier just to lower the 7'9" section, but if you're up against wetland already, I don't think it's a significant enough issue for me to really make any criticism. So again, that was well presented. We appreciate your the detailed information and the clear layout of the situation. So what we do for this is we write a report to the ZBA, just a memo. But I'm going to take a vote. I would move that we approve this, and in our memo, we approve this retaining wall submission as submitted.
So moved.
Steve, can you second?
Yes, a second.
All right, we come to the vote. Len,
Approved.
Nelson, you raise your hand. Can you hear us? Yeah, yes. Okay. Deborah
Approve.
and Steve,
Approved.
and the chair approves.
Okay,
All right,
well,
so we
thank
will.
you.
get
Appreciate it.
members. And when is your hearing? Do you know what, when you're scheduled with the ZBA?
We haven't filed yet, so I mean, we
Okay.
kind of filed with you first, so I think the next step, we'll be on early August. So there'll be
Okay,
some
so I-
time, I think.
so I have
August
time.
11th rings a
Often
bell.
people come today and then their meeting's on Thursday, so I just need to know that.
Yeah, we tried to avoid that and not, in case there was anything that we had to change following this, so.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. And good
All right,
luck.
thank you for your time.
Thank you. Good night.
So the last item is to review the minutes of June 28th. I've been on vacation. In fact, we just rolled in about an hour ago. So I did not, and I had not really any phone access or computer access unless I went to the public library, which I was not going to do on my vacation. So we'll do the minutes for this meeting and that.
Well, just for
next time.
curiosity's sake, where were you?
Acadia National Park.
Oh, nice.
And our friends have a remote little house down by the water, which
Oh,
just does not have reception for much of anything. So
I'm
could
jealous.
I was able to text Elisa a few times, but I couldn't download any sort of real volume of letter, a Word file of any kind. So we'll look at those and get those done for the next meeting. So
Mark, I already made edits, so you should
Okay.
probably start with that
you version-
rendition. If
Okay,
you want me to send you the Word document of it, I will.
yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. And just a question about the retaining wall application. Should I assume it's similar to a site plan review? They don't pay us a fee?
Right, we don't charge a fee because they're already paying a fee to the ZBA. So we're
Okay.
just consulting for the ZBA on this.
Okay.
Any other issues?
Can you
or-
hear me now?
Yes, of course.
You can?
Yeah.
Yes.
I liked it
Oh,
written,
wow.
I approve.
You just hit the monitor, right? You just kind of smacked it,
I unplugged the monitor and plugged it back
plugged it
in.
back in.
I
yeah.
had a couple of questions about the design of the whole site, but it's too late. The lower of the three platforms that they were building drained directly to the left of the site and then off property. You can't do that. You have to collect water somewhere, and that's not a design issue. It's a civil engineering issue, and I don't know if it's something that we should address. But
Well,
I was hoping to mention that before my equipment went south on me.
Yeah, I think you're right. They'll have to, there's really nothing we can do now because we've approved it, but I can just let the building inspector know that we didn't discuss it with the applicant, but he should keep an eye on that because he's the one who will confirm that so that they should bend that 80-foot line back around to catch the existing, which it doesn't do right now. But it could, so they can roll that around. Yeah, that's.
The other issue I noticed was that the sections through the walls show a cap on top of the wall that isn't the full width of the wall. And typically a cap is wider than the top of a wall to protect the top of the wall from having infiltration of water into the concrete. And I'm presuming they will have a cap that's correctly designed, but it didn't
Well,
show it on the section.
All the caps that are shown in that product file are wider than the wall.
Correct, yes.
I think I'm gonna assume it's just a graphic
Okay, that's fine.
error and not a real problem.
Okay,
All right, good. Well, sorry we lost you because I just,
sorry I got lost.
so I would at this point, anything else? Take a motion.
We're
to
not voting
adjourn?
on the minutes today, right?
I didn't write, I haven't reviewed them.
No problem. There's a lot happening. I lost track.
Okay. So I would take a motion to adjourn.
So move.
We have-
Seconded.
Second,
And we come to the vote. Nelson,
Approved.
Len,
approved.
Deborah,
Proof.
Steve,
Approve.
and the chair approves. All right. Thank you.
Welcome
Entertaining,
back.
As usual, yeah.